Yo, hey guys, it's me, Fusion What Ifs, and today I'm back with a new video, this being, what if Deku was an Eliatrope Part 3. Now, yes, I know this video should have been out a while ago, but for some reason I've been having trouble making, the preceding parts of, each of my series, so I just need to get back into the flow of that. Anyways, like I mentioned before in my community, post, if you guys even still check that, Part 2 of what if Deku was Max Steel's Descendant is coming out tomorrow, and then I'm going to say part 2 of what if Deku was a Quincy is also coming out on Wednesday. And anything else I post this week is just, whether or not I feel like it, honestly, right? Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say. Please like and subscribe. Every series I mentioned right now in the intro will be put in the top right corner, so check it out. And without further ado, play my intro. Alright, just before we get into the video, let me just mention real quick, sorry if you guys can hear the background noise that's happening every now and then. We are moving away and I'm hoping the background music does, cover that up for the most part. But yeah, just to tell you guys. Anyways, let's get right into it. The lights would flicker off as a portal suddenly opens in the middle of the USJ, right? Out would appear Shigaraki with the Nomu, and also all the other villains, right? Kirishima obviously seeing this first would say, "Whoa, an actual fake villain attack? Dang, you is going all out." Aizawa, knowing this isn't part of the plan, would instantly look towards them, realizing that there's villains in the US Shandon before yelling, "13, get the kids out of here," before immediately going downstairs to go handle the situation, right? Now, with this, Kiryu, Aizen Cannon would now appear, right? Directly in the center of all, the students. With this, Bakugo and Kirishima would waste no time attacking him, but not his metal chest plate. His metal, neck brace. And because of that, he's the purpose to all attacks and says, something hits there. So obviously they wouldn't actually do anything, right? Which would lead to the students all be getting caught off guard and teleported away. But right before, Izuku is able to send away Ida. Now, if you were thinking why he didn't just go, away himself, it's mostly just because, he hasn't learned Portal Boost yet. So even though he would be able to cover distance, he wouldn't be able to go nearly as fast as Ida would, right? Now, anyways, with that all said and done, we would have Izuku still being teleported to the water area, right? In this one, he would see the villain still teleporting at him, but he would just teleport him away, right? And with this, he would end up seeing Sue actually approaching, right? And he would just let her carry him like in canon, because, he can't really move too well underwater. He can swim, but, he isn't, his best skill, obviously, right? Now, as this would happen, they all get onto the boat, and he would see that's him, Mineta, and Sue. And obviously, they sort of talk it out, and they go the same plan as in canon. But instead of the Delaware smash, Izuku would just shoot a portal beam in the center, creating the same sort of whirlpool effect, right? Before eventually, instead of jumping, they would just teleport back onto land, because Izuku can just help them do that, right? As he reached the central area, they would see Aizawa getting the absolute dog beat out of him, right? Seeing this, Izuku couldn't let this slide, right? So he shoot a portal beam directly at the Nomu, burning some of its skin, just for it to heal almost immediately, right? Seeing this, Shigaraki would be peeved that, some students stopping, the Nomu, right? With this, while Izuku is now holding off the Nomu for as best as he can, Shigaraki and Kiryu would try, the portal hand move that they tried to use against Sue, but this is when Bakugo would actually come and actually bail out Izuku, right? As this happens, Bakugo would land and say, "Hey, idiot, we can't hold back, right?" As he would then fold his fist onto his palms, and Izuku would then say, "Of course I know that, I was just waiting for my partner in crime." With this, Izuku would then cross his hands as portals would start to form, right? Now, from a young age, Izuku and Bakugo had been fighting, growing, and learning to with each other, right? So it's only natural that they have a few combo moves. This one would be called Piercing Rain. As all of a sudden, Bakugo would shoot multiple AP shots through one portal, and they would then come around a bunch of other portals Izuku had put around the Nomu, and also Shigaraki and Kiryu, right? Absolutely causing havoc as it would explode on contact, incapacitating Shigaraki and Kirigiri while also dealing pretty substantial damage to the Nomu, right? Now, the Nomu would just heal this off, but Kirigiri and Shigaraki don't have the same, techniques. With that, they would actually end up having to leave. Shigaraki would order Kirigiri to take them out of there, but before he does, he would look at the Nomu and tell him one last thing: kill everyone here. With that, we would have Shigaraki and Kirigiri gone. With those orders, Izuku and Mako would immediately be pressed by the Nomu at a high level of speeds, right? Rarely being able to hold it off, but they're taking damage. Like, their level of holding it off isn't like they're fighting back. It's just that they're defending themselves enough to not die immediately, right? Finally, we'd have Mako and Izuku being knocked away, and the Nomu would all of a sudden rush towards Bakugo, fist raised, almost about to, kill him, right? All of a sudden, a massive portal beam, probably bigger than whenever, Izuku's ever made in size, would blindside the Nomu, and in the dust we would see Izuku, and he would look different. The upper half of his hero suit would look torn, but this would only go to reveal the blue markings of whack food that would cover his body, and some of it would even trail up to his eyes. Confused, Izuku would look down to see the glowing markings of his own glowing green eyes, and he would feel stronger, faster, more in control. But he knew this wasn't the actual case, right? He wasn't actually getting stronger, just that his focus was completely on battle. The flow of wakfu in his body would be smoother, quicker, and passively enhance his strength with better efficiency. He wasn't given any more power in a sense, he was just using it better, almost as if on instinct. It wouldn't take long for him to realize that this was the Eliatrope battle mode, right? A built-in instinct in serious fights. Now, Izuku's never been in this state a day in his life, right? He's never actually had or been pushed enough to actually go into Eliatrope battle mode. And he thought that when he would be disoriented at first, but no. The world would just seem so clear to him right now, like it was in a new light. Glaring at the Nomu, he would reach his hand into one of the portals on both sides. Both his hands into the portals on both sides, creating a sword and shield out of Wakfu. Usually his Wakfu control would fail him here, right? Because his dad had left him a bunch of techniques that Eliatrope should be able to use, but he never got up to the level of control. But in this state, he could achieve it with ease, right? This would lead to him and the Nomu battling back and forth. And to put it simply, Izuku and the Nomu would be somewhat equals. Izuku would make him for the speed difference by just teleporting and making portals to redirect the Nomu's attacks, while using the shield to block and redirect some of the attacks, and using the sword to, obviously put some slices, right? Eventually the Nomu's speed factor would start to slow down a little bit, but Izuku would realize that he's growing tired himself, right? He's using a lot more energy than the Nomu is. So with his heightened battle IQ, Izuku would think of a solution. He would bait the Nomu into a portal that would send him hundreds of feet into the air, right? Normally he couldn't make portals that far, but in this state he just seemed omnipotent, right? He seemed to be on a different level. And as this would happen, Izuku would fire off a portal beam, but it wouldn't be a normal type of portal beam, right? He would pour all of his whack food into it. And to put it simply, he would put like a 10-meter wide hole in the roof of the USJ, and no one would be disintegrated with nothing left of it, right? With that done, Izuku would be surrounded by villains and faint. The last thing he would hear are his classmates who would jump down to defend him from the rest of the villains, right? Now Izuku would wake up about 3 days later to his mom, Ochako, and Bakugo by his bed, right? Receiving hugs and worries as they would mention how happy they are that he's alive. Because keep in mind, Inko in this one isn't too worried about Izuku, because Izuku does technically have, superpower. And she does know how durable, the Eliatrope physique is and all of that, having, read it already, and, with being with Hisashi for so long, right? Excuse me. But, yeah. But she would still be surprised that he actually got this hurt. And obviously, Ochako and him are crying, just locked in. So, she's obviously there crying a little bit too. She doesn't know nearly as much about, his durability as the other two. And Bakugo's just kind of there like, about time you woke up, idiot. Yeah, all that tsundere, whatever. But that aside, we would now finally have them, talking to him and, the sports festival and all of that, right? And how it's going to happen in about, I guess, a week and like 5 days, because he's been sleeping for like 3 days straight. Which is something I should mention. He did sleep for like 3 days straight. But yeah, eventually, they'd end up leaving him to his own affairs as he would be in the hospital. And he would notice that his wakfu flow would be slower than usual, right? And this would just be to like mitigate his burned out pathways, because using the Eliatrope battle mode isn't exactly easy by any means, right? It is a massive boost in control and focus, but with that would come surpassing like natural limiters, right? There's a reason why he isn't able to usually do all the things he usually is able to do. That's because his body just isn't ready yet, right? It's sort of like for one for all, right? He would just end up breaking his bones, but instead of him just breaking his bones whenever he goes to his limiters just stop him from going over in the first place, right? Sorry if that sounds kind of confusing, but like if you get it, you get it, honestly, right? So with this, he actually wouldn't be able to use any tedious moves like portal beams, or he wouldn't even be able to attempt making, any of the wakfu constructs, right? But seeing as he is bedridden, he would actually focus more on control, because he realized that with that he could become much stronger than he already is. And he would actually end up trying wakfu construct creation, but it would be on a much smaller level, right? While also attempting to use the battle mode on command. He wouldn't be trying too hard, because he knows that if he does do it right now, he would probably end up fainting once again. But it's just to get back into the feeling, right? That sense of just flow state. And with that, 2 weeks end up passing, and Izuku wouldn't actually have achieved much. I'm not gonna lie. He spent most of his time healing after, entering the Wakfu battle mode. Sorry, Wakfu, no, Eliatrope battle mode. Actually, I'm just gonna call this like combat mode, or like CM, right? But he can make very small Wakfu constructs, like a small hand knife, but they disperse after a few seconds, right? He would finally pull up to school after, being gone for 2 weeks, and every one of his classmates would be happy to see that he's still alive, congratulate him on his recovery, while Aizawa would scold him for his reckless behavior, but still thank him for saving his life. Everyone would now hop on the bus to head over to the stadium, right? And as they get there, they finally end up being called up by, midnight, saying, "Welcome, Class 1A," and the crowd would go completely wild, and she'd then keep on announcing all the other classes, with them not being as loud, right? This is when Monoma, the guy with the copycat quirk, would obviously complain, saying that he's not sure why Class 1A got that many more cheers, right? Especially since Class 1B is a lot better, right? Izuku would hear this, and he'd be kind of confused on why someone would openly say this, right? Before he would then be informed by, I'm gonna say, Mina, that, they're apparently at war with Class 1B since they got challenged to take their spots, right? And obviously, Izuku isn't one to back down from a challenge. So, as he's called up for the speech by midnight, he would go up and he would say, "Thank you everyone for coming. I could give some lofty speech, but no, I'll do you one better. As a representative of Class 1A, their president, and the record breaker, I promise you that I'll achieve a strength like no other. I'll become so strong that no matter how powerful villains become, they'll only ever dream of seeing my feet. I won't be the symbol of peace, but the symbol of heroism for all former heroes and those to come. This festival isn't my peak, it's just the beginning of my legacy. Also, I'm winning this tournament, plus ultra." And with that, the crowd would go absolutely crazy, right? Because he pretty much just said that he's gonna be the number one, the new best, right? And you've heard a lot of people say this before, but Izuku seems to carry himself with sort of aura unlike anyone they've seen before, right? And with this, they would be excited to see what he would bring to the table. Sorry for the slight cut, but yeah, back to the video. As he would walk back down, he'd end up seeing Monoma absolutely losing his mind, with Kendo having to hold him back, while the rest of the other classes, including Class 1A, have a fire in their eyes. Something they want to prove, to tell everyone else in this crowd that they're also here to be heroes, and they aren't going to stop till they're the very best as well. Smiling, Ochako would end up walking up to Izuku and tells him they made a lot of enemies today, right? To which he just reply that people can only give their best when they're pressured, right? With this, end up moving on to the change room, to get changed, obviously. And Todoroki would still end up walking up to Izuku to declare his own personal battle against him, right? Saying that Izuku is pretty much his class's all might, like the all strongest, right? And he's gonna beat him and show him that he can become the strongest without using, his dad's quirk. Hearing this, Izuku said that he'll have to use both sides to even begin to match him, right? With that being said, Todoroki would actually end up walking away slightly peeved at, his declaration of battle being sort of scoffed aside. With this, we'd have Midnight finally announcing the first event, that being a race. To put it simply, Izuku wouldn't even have to try too hard. He would just make portals and teleport there, right? Now, using the portals isn't really quick, but the distance the covers does make up for it, right? So I end up being first with, same as in canon, for whoever comes like second, third, and fourth and all of that, right? After this, we're gonna have the cavalry battle like in canon, and in this one, there's gonna be him and Ochako. And for the first time in forever, I'm actually going to have him just rely on his Whatif sense, right? Something he does have. He doesn't really get a lot of chances to, leverage on his Whatif sense, and that is how he sort of sensed when the villains were invading the USJ. So now with his Whatif sense and his, superior speed compared to, all the other non-speedsters, he's pretty much dodging every move with ease. Now, he does have to also account for Ochako, who's on his shoulders, but she's not exactly heavy in any sense, right? So, especially with someone of his strength, right? So he ended up dodging. Now, every now and then, he would end up almost being clipped by someone like Bakugo or Todoroki, or even Ida, who would end up speeding through on Todoroki's team. But, like I mentioned before, Izuku does still have portals, right? So with that, he would actually be able to, clutch up, and he ends up winning first. Now, for convenience sake, I am going to say that the matches do stay in like the same layout, just so I don't have to think too hard. And also, just because it was kind of funny, actually, nah, never mind, scratch what I was about to say. But anyways, we end up moving through, and we would have Shinso versus Izuku, right? Now, as I get up there, Shinso ends up saying that, oh, so lucky that he has such a powerful quirk. And Izuku says the quirk doesn't make me powerful, and before he can even continue to answer, Shinso would just say, gotcha. How about you go walk out this arena for me? And Izuku, who's now sort of like in the back, the back of his mind, would end up just seeing like his wife from third person point of view start walking out, right? Now, obviously, you try to stop it, but before he could, he'd be bombarded with a bunch of memories, right? It would be of this war against the mechanisms, all these other Eliatropes, this place he doesn't remember, right? He's never been here before. He doesn't understand what he's seeing. And as he starts to get deeper and closer, he looks towards someone. It looks to be someone of his age. No, older. He would be wearing this blue suit, and he would seem to have a white dragon beside him. His name would be Yugo. And right before Yugo would end up saying his name, all of a sudden, he'd be broken out of his memories as a figure would appear in front of him. It would have no distinguishable traits except for, the Eliatrope wings, and its body made entirely out of like blue Whatif, right? And with this, the figure would then say, "It's not your time to learn yet." And with that, the figure would naturally snap him out of his mindscape, right? And with that, we'd actually see Izuku's eyes sort of light up and a pulse of Whatif hit the stadium, right? Think of how he did when he was, awakened by the former users of One For All when this happened. And in this one actually be so strong that Shinso would actually almost end up getting flung out the arena, right? With this, he would sort of like scratch his shoulders and say, "Oh, you almost got me there. Can't even lie." And without further ado, he just end up speed blitzing Shinso, right? End of that story. Now we'd have Izuku versus Todoroki. And Todoroki would start sending spikes of ice directly Izuku's way, right? And Izuku would either dodge out the way or just teleport them away or right back at Todoroki using, just portal, right? And eventually Todoroki ended up realizing that, right now he's currently on the back burners and he's struggling bad, right? So with that, he would actually consider using this fire, but no, he couldn't give in to Endeavor. With this and seeing his pretty obvious stress, Izuku ended up telling him that if he doesn't want to be a hero, you can just leave. Everyone here is trying their best, and if you don't want to try your best to become a hero either, then I'm not sure you belong at UA, Todoroki. So I'll give you one more chance. Show me what you're made of. One last attack. We can end all right here. And with this, Izuku would start putting both his hands together as he ended up making a giant portal that would start generating a bunch of energy, right? Hearing this, Todoroki would end up having the same flashback as in canon, and he would tear up a little bit saying, "I do want to be a hero," as he would begin to do like the same like flash fire or whatever he did in canon, as Izuku ended up shooting a massive portal beam, and to put it simply, a massive clash would end up happening like in canon, and Izuku would end up winning this time, just mainly because, that Eliatrope physique, I'm gonna keep on mentioning it, the Eliatrope physique, it does not miss, bro. They are strong, like without a doubt. So with that, Izuku ended up winning as Todoroki ended up fainting in, the stadium. With that, the crowd would go wild again, with Izuku looking up to seeing Ochako having the biggest smile on her face as she is still clapping the loudest for him. Now, next one we would have the final battle, that being Bakugo versus Izuku. Yes, I know I am sort of speeding through all these matches, but yeah, I do have stuff to do soon, so let me just have this, right? So anyways, we'd have Izuku versus Bakugo, And to put simply, the battle was going to be legendary, right? As they'd walk up, Akko would say, we should put on a show, don't you think, idiot? And Izuku would end up just nodding his head, saying, I wouldn't have it any other way, right? As they would slowly close the gap and get into their respective stances. Like I mentioned before, Izuku and Mako had grown together for a long time. And with this, they'd have to keep on finding new ways to one-up each other. And one of the ways they found was actually martial arts. Now, Izuku would have actually decided to go down the taekwondo route, right? To emphasize his superior speed over most people and also just his superior strength in the first place, right? He'd have phenomenal balance and control over his body. While Baku would end up going judo, right? Just because he'll be able to redirect an opponent's strength back at them, and because generally he's usually fighting someone stronger than him, like Izuku. Like pure physical strength, Izuku beats Bakugo 10 out of 10 times, so he had to find some way to close the gap, and judo was his only choice, right? So it just began like that, right? Throwing kicks to which, Bakugo ended up redirecting to throw into a throw, to which, Izuku would just end up flipping out of, right? This would go back and forth, but it would be at a faster speed than in real life, right? Impressing the crowd that, teens so young can be proficient enough in martial arts to use it like this, right? Now, as this was happening, they would eventually just naturally move on to quirk application, right? Like Izuku teleporting to add more speed to, his kicks, or even just to close the distance, right? While Bakugo would use explosions to increase the power of his tosses and also get closer to do, his joint locks. And with this, the crowd would end up just being astounded that students like this, that these are students of UA, right? And even the villains, like the League of Villains who are watching from at home, are surprised at these two's strength, right? And even Off-Road would get a little bit worried. Not that, they're on his strength by any means, but just that they have potential. Potential that is scary to see, right? Especially while he is still, incapacitated in most sense. Now, finally, we would just move on to full quirk application. And to put it simply, they sort of just drop the martial arts and start firing beams, right? Like, Bakugo would be shooting a bunch of explosions, massive ones, AP shots, while Izuku would end up teleporting them a few, portals and getting in close, throwing in a few, of those, Wakfu blades that he can create that would disappear quite quickly, but would still end up catching Bakugo off guard every now and then. And yeah, it would just be a back and forth fight at their full power, and eventually they'd end up just nodding as they said, we have to finish this now, don't you think? And this is when Bakugo would end up rising up before finally saying, howitzer impact. And we would have Izuku himself. He would make one of his swords, right? Obviously it would be destabilizing, but something he has learned is that he can control the destabilization. That's probably not even a word, but he can control how it destabilizes, right? So it would actually end up exploding as he would make contact with the howitzer impact, and with this they'd end up colliding, right? Smoke would have hit the stadium, and that's where I'm gonna end off, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed. This has been What If Deku Was an Eliatrope Part 3. Yes, the winner has not been announced yet, but it will be announced in the next part, so go watch that. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed, please like and subscribe, trying to hit 3K eventually. And also go watch all the other series I put up in the top right corner, which I'll put up again, I guess. And yeah, if you guys enjoy, check out the rest of my videos on my channel. And without further ado, stay cold, stay frosted. Love you guys. Peace.